Time Walk with me.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to Time Walk with me. I am the Time Walker, and this is my good friend Zimone Paradox Sculptor. She is a 1/4 human wizard who costs 2 generic, 1 green, and 1 blue mana to cast. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. You can't put them both on one creature, but you can choose 0 creatures if you want all your creatures to not get any stronger. For a green and a blue and a tap, Zimone can double the number of each kind of counters on up to 2 target creatures and or artifacts that you control. That makes her not as good as Deep Glow Skate, except that she can be your commander, so you don't have to jump through any hoops to get her out and keep getting her out like in my Prismatic Bridge deck. Every turn, all by herself, she can use both of her abilities to pump up 2 creatures into terrifying threats. Those threats come in the form of flying creatures that mostly start out small and unassuming. Cloudfin Raptor. This bird mutant comes with its own method of accumulating +1/+1 counters in addition to the 2 employed by Zimone. Sinette Jelly Drover, or Sinette? I think it's Sinette. This anime girl who should be in great pain right now but somehow isn't, can't fly herself, but she makes a flying 1/1 jellyfish token when she enters or dies. She also serves as an anthem for your flying creatures. Fairy Vandal. Like Cloudfin Raptor, this little fairy rogue has its own way of pumping itself up permanently, making it easy for Zimone to monstrositize it. High Fae Trickster. This fairy wizard lets you cast spells at instant speed. Hypnotic Sprite / Mesmeric Glare. This fairy is 2 spells in 1. Ledger Shredder. Mahamadijin. Peregrine Drake. Skyship Plunderer. Whenever this human pirate hurts someone in combat, it's like a mini proliferate, giving one permanent or player 1 more counter of each kind they already have. Spectral Sailor. This spirit pirate's activated ability is a little pricey, but later in the game when you need the draw the most, it'll be fairly affordable. It's mostly here because it's a 1/1 flyer for 1 mana. Thrumming Bird. Tide Skimmer. Trawler Drake. If you put some +1/+1 counters on this in addition to the oil counters, then Zimone's ability will double both kinds of counters, increasing its power and toughness faster than the other creatures in this category. Warden of Evos Isle. This could go in the ramp section, but it's a flyer, so it's here. And Zephyr Winder. When this elemental hits someone, it untaps Zimone so she can double up more counters. These are cards that aren't flying creatures, but they still benefit from Zimone's ability or they complement it somehow. Or I just liked them and wanted them in here. Clock Spinning. This had to be in here. It can add counters to any of your permanents or your opponent's permanents, and it can do it repeatedly for 4 mana each time. Clone Legion. If an opponent has better creatures than you do, now there's no need to be jealous. Colossal Majesty. This is here to make you draw cards. Deep Glow Skate. This guy rules, but this deck doesn't rely on it as much as the last deck I put it in. It doubles the counters on any number of target permanents when it enters the battlefield. Doubling Season. I got one of these in a very lucky pack recently, so I had to put it in here. There are probably budget alternatives if you don't have one. I wouldn't recommend chasing it in packs or buying it as a single unless the money isn't a big deal to you, but if that's the case, you probably already have a few. Elminster's Simulacrum. If all of your opponents have better creatures than you do, now there's less need to be jealous. Lux Cannon. Zimone can double the counters on up to 2 creatures and or artifacts, so this is fair game. Magistrate's Scepter. With this in a little time, you could easily get infinite turns, so don't do it. You'll win, and it'll be glorious. Mystic Reflection. You can do some cool stuff with this. Wait until an opponent plays something that creates a ton of creature tokens that are supposed to be cool, and make them into something lame instead. Or make your own tokens into copies of something cool. Orochi Hatchery. This goes well with Mystic Reflection. Once it has a lot of counters on it, use it to generate a ton of snakes that enter as Peregrine Drakes, or Thrumming Birds, or Mahamadijins. Otherworld Atlas. This helps everyone out, but it's okay to do your opponents a favor sometimes. Shared Summons. There are many creatures in this deck that you might want to grab with this. Sphinx Bone Wand. This deals damage to creatures or players when you cast an instant or sorcery, but you can add additional counters to it in other ways. Stocking the Pantry. Zimone's triggered ability will trigger this enchantment's triggered ability, allowing you at least 1 extra draw every turn for 2 mana each. Sun Crusher. Zimone turns this creature into a great creature destroyer, and if anyone tries to stop it, you can just return it to your hand. The Millennium Calendar. This might not last long on the battlefield, but if it does, it stands a good chance of winning you the game. Titan Forge. With a little setup, this can get you a 9/9 golem every turn. Toski, Bearer of Secrets. With all your flyers getting combat damage through, you'll be drawing a good number of cards. Transmogrifying Wand. This transforms your opponent's scary creatures into relatively harmless oxen. Vorel of the Hullclade. This could be an alternative commander for this deck. It doubles the counters on an artifact, creature, or land, but it only does 1 per activation and doesn't provide +1/+1 counters. And Walking Skyscraper. I cut a flyer to put this in here. I figured it's huge and has trample, so it's a good trade-off. And its mana cost reduction means you'll be able to cast it for very little once you have a few modified creatures out. Contentious Plan. Inexorable Tide. Plane-Wide Celebration. Steady Progress. And Tezzeret's Gambit. These are here to untap Zimone or whoever else needs untapping. Boon of Boseiju. Dramatic Reversal. Dream's Grip. Gift of the Viper. Instill Energy. Leaping Ambush. Shore Up. Triton Tactics. And Vizier of Tumbling Sands. I took apart my Deep Glow Skate deck to make my Celestial Dragon deck, and many of the cards in the Skate deck weren't really that useful for the Dragon deck, so they found a home here. Astral Cornucopia. This mana rock likes to have a lot of counters on it. Cultivate. Elven Chorus. This turns your creatures into mana dorks, and it also expands your hand and lets you look at the top card of your library whenever you want. Everflowing Chalice. Like the Cornucopia, this mana rock does well with a lot of counters on it, though it taps for only colorless mana. Expand the Sphere. If this doesn't end up finding you any lands, or if you don't need any more, it can proliferate up to 2 times. Harrow. Kodama's Reach. Lantern of Revealing. This gives you mana and helps you get more lands out from the top of your library. Midnight Clock. This mana rock doubles as a one-sided time twister. Nature's Lore. Replicating Ring. This explodes into mana rocks when enough counters are put on it. Solemn Simulacrum. Sad Robot. Tender Wild Guide. When you don't need mana for this father-son combo, they can work out and get stronger. And 3 visits. For this section, I made sure that if a land enters the battlefield tapped, it either did something other than just tap for one of 2 colors of mana, or counted as an island and a forest for the ramp spells that make me search for a forest. Islands and forests. The islands are here to tap for blue mana, and the forests are here to tap for green mana. Bark Channel Pathway / Tide Channel Pathway. Lityara Mirror Lake, or Lityara Mirror Lake, that's probably correct. This is one of my favorite utility lands. It creates a copy of a creature you control and puts an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Llanowar Reborn. This strange land enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, which is odd because it's not a creature. Zimone can't double these counters, but other creatures in this deck can. But even if you just use the 1 counter that it enters with, it's still better than a land that just taps for a green mana. Quandrix Campus. Rejuvenating Springs. I typically play 4-player games, so this won't enter the battlefield tapped. Rimewood Falls. Simic Growth Chamber. Tangled Islet. Temple of the False God. Thornwood Falls. And Yavimaya Coast. And that's it! What do you think of my friend Zimone Paradox Sculptor? Is she the best Zimone so far? Tell me stuff in the comments. And remember, Luigi Mangione is a hero, and I wish he could have attended Donald Trump's inauguration.